So Bona, greetings to you. This is Gogo Thule Ngane. I greet you in love. Thank you for joining me for this audio, How to Align with Your Ancestral Guardians. So I would like to share some guidance on how to really begin to connect with your guardians. And some of these things you may have already heard before, but what I find is that even when I ask people, when I listen to the things that are going on in their lives, and I'll ask them if they're doing one of these things, and they're like, no, I'm like, well, what are you waiting for? you know? So for me, this comes from a space of either not truly understanding the importance of these things, these practices, or from a space of not realizing or not feeling as comfortable, or it feels like you're not connected to it, or it feels uncomfortable, or you have some type of fear around connecting with spirit. So I'm hoping that I can share this guidance from a space that nourishes those spaces within you. And I would love to start with the simple understanding of altar spaces. So one thing you will see in South Africa, or many indigenous communities, especially in the rural areas where traditions are still kept in South Africa, when you go to the villages and you're driving through the neighborhoods, you will see, regular square houses, but you will also see a round house in the compound. And this is the space where the ancestors dwell on the compound. This is the space where items of past loved ones are kept, where the altars and the rituals for ancestors or spirit matters in the family are done. So altars are not a new concept. In African spirituality, you may hear it used interchangeably with shrines and altars. And though you can interchange them, shrines tend to be a little bit different. Shrines are something that are rarely ever set up by one person. It's a very sacred practice and ritual that is done, and it's usually not required unless something is being asked of you from the spirits. So an altar is something that everyone has and everyone can have, and this is your way of having a physical representation in a physical space of what exists in the spirit realm. So truly, you are the altar because the ancestors and the spirits dwell within you. They dwell within your energy body. They dwell within your DNA. And so this is just an outward representation, a way to invite the ancestors into the home, because we're not just spiritual beings, we're physical. And so we don't just have this body, we're creating these homes and these communities around us. And so we're also inviting the ancestors into the physical aspect of our lives. And so this is where we can honor them, honor the aspect of us that already exists in spirit form. This is where we can connect with them. This is our portal to them. This is our place of power. And so an elder once told me that that just has the spirit, as we have this altar in the physical realm, that there's also a space in the spirit realm where the ancestors come to take care of us and nourish us and make offerings to our spirit. From an African traditional perspective, our ancestors, they are doing so much for us. They gave us life, they gave us breath, they gave us this body and this DNA and the codes to who we are. And they protect us and save our lives, or speak it and whisper into our ears to help us realize things all the time. And so to give thanks, or to honor that connection and make sure that portal remains open, one of the things that we do is that we build and create altar spaces. We use the forces of nature, things that inspire you, pictures of loved ones that have passed, or deities and goddesses that we're connected to. This is where we can honor them and bring them into our life from the physical realm. The second guidance is offerings. So this is what I mean. This is what African spiritualists mean by feeding your ancestors, feeding your spirits. So at your altar space, you give things, you make offerings. And a lot of times people think, well, what do they need food and candles and, and things for? They're in the spirit realm. And it's really not so much about them. It's about you. It's about lighting a candle to maintain your light. It's about feeding your spirit. And it's about giving them tools, elements from the earth in order to continue to help you, in order to communicate, to make that string that connects you to them clear. You know, a lot of times we find ourselves out of source, stressed out, distraught, out of balance, or whatever it is, because something has gotten in the way of that connection, whether it's within our own minds and emotions or experiences and traumas. And so when we make offerings, we're able to clear things, we're able to ask for things, and we're able to acknowledge the exchange that is happening. We're able to really just give back as they are giving to us. And so you can keep a white candle lit at your altar. You can give flowers and food and candies, or especially foods that you know that your ancestors liked and ate, no matter the region of the world. Things that you know your grandfather liked, your great grandfather, or the people in your family used. You can offer those things. If you knew they liked a certain drink, you can offer those things. And a few basic things is definitely candles, incense, herbs, smoking herbs that, you know, different types of incense. And what is truly always common is a bowl of water, the different elements of the earth. Water especially is to quench their thirst, quench your thirst. Water is an element that is a portal for communication. It's like a mirror. So information can be sent in and through water. And so you can place water at your altar, refresh it every couple of days, and maintain the energy that you are generating through this portal that is your altar space. Offerings can also be made in nature because the ancestors and our guardians also dwell within the forces of nature. And there are times when there are offerings that need to be made on your behalf. So by certain elders or priestesses or seers, because when you're making offerings, even something as simple as a candle, the candle is burning a certain way, or the what you're giving is the ancestors are responding back to you a certain way, and until you have gotten to a level where you can really interpret and understand the interaction that is happening, it is wise to have a guide who sees how energy is moving and if the offerings were accepted or if more needs to be done so that energy can move to completely shift what it is that you're asking that needs to be shifted in your life. So the basics are always welcome. And then if you need to go deeper for bigger concerns, there's always help and guidance. So the third reminder here is soul seeking. And what I mean by that is knowledge of self, learning yourself, paying attention to who you are. Because on this journey, as you're meditating, as you're making offerings, as you're setting up your altars, the spirits are interacting with you and speaking back. And it's important to understand how you hear and how you receive the energetic shifts and messages and omens that come from our ancestral guardians. So you may be one that is, if you just think about your chakras, the 7 portals within your body, energy centers, you may be one that really perceives the world through your third eye. You have visions, or you're very creative and animated. And so meditation and really strengthening that third eye chakra is important. It's important for you to pay attention to receiving messages in that way, or strengthening your dreams, your connection to your dreams, so that you can see the response or the guidance that your ancestors are trying to speak to you. Not everybody hears a voice like while they're sitting at their altar. The response, the way that our ancestral guardians speak is very non-linear. We're used to regular conversations with people, and it's direct. And the language of the spirits is very non-linear. It's pictures and images and sensations in your body. It's a whisper or any number of these things. And so understanding, yourself, you may be very much an air sign, a mind person. So you have to work on knowing the difference between your ego thoughts or the thoughts of your higher self or the thoughts of interfering spirits. So if you're very much in your mind, it's important for you to navigate your mind, navigate your subconscious, your unconscious, through meditative practices to understand. You may be a very sacral chakra, feeling oriented type of person. So you sense when something is off, or you sense in order to know what spirit is communicating to you. And so knowing these things about yourself is really important. Even understanding masculine and feminine energy, or your astrological signs and how the stars were aligned for you. If you're a person like me who is very much more in that intellectual, that doer, that masculine energy, I've learned that it's because I have a lot of male spirits with me, or a lot of male guardians chose to walk with me in this lifetime because they knew how my personality and my characteristics would turn out. So beginning to understand your soul and yourself from this perspective will begin to help you to understand who your ancestral guardians are, how they manifest in your life, and just how energy is moving to and through you. So the last piece for now is to divine, and this guidance is to open you up to receiving messages from the ancestors through oracles, through seers, through a priestess, or through some form of divination. This is how we remove our ego, we remove ourselves, and get information from a higher perspective. Divination is important because we're able to see through the eyes of the spirits. They are seeing above and beyond us, beyond this moment, beyond this dimension, beyond time. They're able to see things from a higher perspective, and a map that is the story of you beyond this lifetime. And I find this is really important because sometimes in our spiritual journey, we're very much self-development oriented, and it's important to just look at the ancient civilizations and indigenous communities, whether there were chiefs or there were kings. They would consult, there would always be an oracle. They would make decisions based on what the oracle sees from a spiritual perspective that needs to be done in the community, at what time, at what phase of the moon, before they would go into war, or to know when danger was or an attack was coming. The oracles were consulted in order to know when to plant certain seeds and harvest, in order to know what deities resided in certain lands before moving in and building on it. We consult the oracles. Even naming children and certain rites of passages were all governed through the messages of the oracles. And this is also important because things are always changing and shifting. And so it's important to check in. Now, some people tend to go overboard with divination, and they're consulting or getting readings, too often, that they're now stepping outside of their intuition and giving their power over to somebody else. That's not what I'm trying to suggest here. I'm trying to suggest to check in, especially when you have a hard time seeing for yourself. Checking in at the change of the seasons, or at least once a year, to make sure that you're doing the best that you can in your practices, in the way that you're navigating your life, in the way that you're seeing the people and the relationships that you're having, and seeing if it is in alignment with what your ancestral guardians have for you or can see for you. So this is my guidance for aligning with your ancestral spirits. There is so much more and many ways to do these things. Just another thing that's coming to me about knowledge of self is is also taking the time to get to know your family members and your family stories and histories and where you come from. Not everybody is able to locate a point on the map of Africa or anywhere else, but even if you just listen to find creative ways to ask your family members about what they did and how they did it, what foods, what routines, what did they do when somebody was getting married, what did they do when a child was birthed, what herbs did they drink. I was asking my mother the other day about just herbs that they used in the country that I was born in West Africa. And I was trying to get her to tell me about herbs from a spiritual perspective, because plants have a spirit, and it's not just about the biological things that they can do for us. So I was asking her some questions, and she was telling me about how in her grandfather's village they would have a medicine that you could put at the front of the door of the compound, so that any negative person that walked into the compound would automatically not feel like they could stay there. And she told me about an herb that they would use when a loved one or a family member passed away, and they passed away. If a family member passed away in your arms, there's a certain herb and a certain cleansing that we would do in my culture to help release, just the attachments and sometimes the heaviness that comes with seeing our loved ones pass. So when we get to talk to our family members, we can discover these types of things about ourselves and about our ancestral guardians. And before I go on any more tangents, I'm going to close here. Thank you for holding space with me. Thank you for listening. I hope that this touched your spirit in a beautiful way. If you need support or have questions, you can always email or message me online at any time. If you're in need of divination as well, you can reach me on my website. And I'm just grateful, and I continue to lend energy to all beings for us all to continue to raise our consciousness, continue to connect with our lineages and the wisdom that is in our blood and our bones. And I just give thanks for this moment in time. Journey soulfully, loves.